Hey guys, my name is Tony with PowerSports at Palm Beach. Today we're going to be changing the oil on a Yamaha FZ-09, and here we go. All right guys, so today we're going to be changing the oil on FZ-09. Tools of the trade you're going to need a container to dump the oil, a couple rags to clean up after yourself, oil filter wrench, you can get it at any local hardware store, and the oil drain bolt on this bike is a 17mm nut, and I'll be using snap-on tools as we use on all of our vehicles we work on. And if you're got nice hands, a pair of gloves. Here we go. So I'm going to break the oil drain bolt loose, but I'm not going to take it completely out. I'm just going to break it loose so I can turn it with my fingers. And I'm just going to turn it with my fingers to let the oil come out. And what I usually do is I try to hold the bolt up into the motor until I clear all the threads. And then I can pull the bolt out real tight and hopefully not get any oil on my fingers. There you go. So very little oil on my fingers. If you do it right. All right guys, so we got the oil drain bolt out. One thing I forgot to say is I always use brake cleaner, especially a low VOC brake cleaner. I get this stuff at Discount Auto Parts for a couple bucks a can. Very worthwhile when you're working on bikes. It cleans all the oil off of what you're working on. Also cleans your tools real well. So the oil filter wrench, oil filter is located right here on the motor. Move our pan underneath the oil filter and just unscrew the oil filter. And I always like to clean off my oil filter with a little brake cleaner to make sure it's nice and clean. Clean off the motor and the pipes so you don't cause any trouble later. New oil filter. One thing too people get caught with is this O-ring around the oil filter. Sometimes this O-ring will get stuck on the motor and people will go and put a new oil filter on and there'll actually be two O-rings and it'll actually blow all the oil out of the motor and it could actually potentially blow up. So you always want to make sure that you don't have an O-ring on the old oil filter stuck to the motor. You just want to make sure you have the new one for the new oil filter. And when you put the new oil filter on, you always want to make sure you tighten it by hand. You don't ever want to use the oil filter wrench to tighten it because it could puncture the oil filter. If it gets a little sticky, you can always clean it off with some brake cleaner, or you could just take your glove off and your bare hands will be able to tighten it nice and tight. If you tighten it with your bare hands and it's nice and tight, you got good grip strength, it's on there, it's good. So now we just take our oil bolt, drain bolt that we already cleaned off. Go ahead and stick it back in. Also, another key is just not to be in a rush. You know, it takes time. You know, you don't need to be in a rush. You get in a rush, you make a mess. And I hate oil. So tighten the drain bolt down. Again, these things don't need to be real tight, about 18 foot-pounds of torque. You got to remember you're taking this bolt in and out, in and out, in and out on every oil change. So the last thing you want to do is strip these threads. So nice and snug, but not over tight. Super important. Another one thing I will mention is in your oil funnel, you always want to make sure that the inside is clean. If there's any dirt or debris, it's going to make itself down into your motor, which is not good. Also too, on most motorcycles, they have a CM or a CC of how much oil is supposed to go in the bike. That is without an oil filter. Usually it's anywhere between 3 and 4 quarts in any 4-cylinder street bike today. If you see we have our sight glass where you saw it before. Oil's to the top. One thing you got to remember too is it's not reading in the oil filter. So every time you do an oil change and you change the oil filter, you have to start the bike for a few seconds to let the oil pump into the oil filter, and then you recheck the sight glass, and then you fill it up to the full mark on the sight glass, and you'll be good. So we'll give her a start. Couple seconds is all she needs. If we look down here again, you'll see all the oil is completely gone out of the sight glass that we thought was there. So now you just let the oil kind of accumulate down. You'll go ahead and fill it up to your full mark. Most motorcycles have a full mark on the sight glass, some type of line, some type of dot. This one, it looks like there's one line here, which would be low, and one line on the top, which looks to be full. Another important thing is make sure your motorcycle is always straight across when you're looking at the sight glass, because if the bike's tilted sideways, you're going to get a bad reading here. So you always want to make sure the motorcycle is straight up and down. So as you can see, the oil's pretty much settled. Go ahead and open our oil fill cap again. Fill it up the rest of the way. Give it a little brake cleaner. Clean all the residue off. There you go. Oil change on a 2014 FZ-09 at PowerSports at Palm Beach. Check us out on the web, 561powersports.com, or on Facebook, /PowersportsPB, and Google+, PowerSports Lake Park.